Hey there, YouTubers. So I get a lot of comments from viewers about their temps of the 13th gen CPUs, whether they're running hot. I've had that problem too with 13th gen. It's been kind of interesting. Have had a dozen or more motherboards come through here that are LGA 1700, and some of the temps have varied between motherboards. And we're talking quality Z690s to another Z690 in the same price range. So some of this could be blamed on the uh, materials that make up the motherboard. But let's look at the obvious things first, okay? You buy a $20 CPU cooler to keep your i5 13600KF cool. Maybe not such a good thing, right? You probably need to upgrade. Do you need to upgrade to a Noctua NH-D15? Most likely not, but this isn't a half bad starting point for 13th gen unlocked CPUs. Now, locked CPUs, totally another story. You can get away with that $20 CPU cooler. Now, maybe, this isn't cutting it with the i9 13900K. Maybe you need a 420 like I have. Uh, this thing's, pretty ridiculous size-wise. The radiator is ridiculously big. 340 millimeter fans. Um, you know, thing about this is you need a much bigger case. We'll talk about that in a bit. But these things work, right? If you can't get this thing to work, there's something else wrong. Maybe you should potentially find somebody else to build your computer for you. I don't know. Or it's the CPU, or is it? Um, Thermal paste, if you did buy that $20 CPU cooler and you use their thermal paste, um, maybe not the best thing in the world, right? Maybe you should spend some money and get better thermal paste. Is this worth it? It depends. I'm not going to go out and buy $18 Thermal Grizzly CPU paste and get 2 grams, basically 9 grams or $9 per gram. I'd be more likely to, when I can find it, buy the Noctua 10 gram for 10 to 15 bucks in that price range. Motherboards, folks. So we've had quite a few motherboards, and whether it's just a dud, but this MSI Z690 I've had issues with it running hot. So the i7 that was in there had some issues. Now I've just had the i5 in there, and runs hot during gaming, runs hot for benchmarks, like really ridiculously hot. I've had also MSI, or excuse me, Asus Prime, and those underperformed. They actually stayed really cold. And then I found out, oh, you need the Intel Management Engine update. But guess what? They started underperforming still, even with the update. But they did stay cooler. Now, my two best motherboards would be this Aorus Z690 Extreme AX. I guess this isn't the X model. And my Gigabyte UD Z790. They keep my CPUs cool, and I've been able to get away with, well, in this case, we've got Noctua NHU14S on here. We'll do a little bit of benchmark, and maybe I'll jump into a game, and you can see what the temps are with it. So we've looked at, consider, hey, maybe a different motherboard might solve your problem. Cases, more volume, more fans, hopefully means a cooler CPU. The better your airflow, the better that CPU is going to be kept cool, right? So I'm not suggesting everybody go buy a $269 full tower, because I sure as hell won't. But, you know, full towers definitely have better airflow as far as, that whole volume and the amount of fans you can stick in them. and the bigger CPU coolers. Um, so there is something to be said about that. Most of you will go with a mid tower, and those are for the most part perfectly fine, right? I've got maybe 2 or 3 full towers here out of the 25, 30 cases I have, and um, I always put my best stuff in those. So um, whether I could get away with putting it in one of the cheaper cases or the mid towers, I'm not really gonna believe that they're gonna keep my stuff as cool. So another thing you guys can do, leave that side panel off when you're heavily gaming or definitely doing benchmarks. That can make a difference. If you're not getting good airflow, pulling this off, will help, right? So, all right, let's jump over to here. So i5 13600KF. Here's my RAM, D5. Love this motherboard. Windows 11, blah blah blah, right? Let's clear this out. Well, what I want to talk about in this portion of the video is things that I have done to get my temps down, okay? So we're not even at defaults here, but let's say you watch one of my videos, you wanted to get your best benchmark, and usually that comes with power limits unlimited or somewhere, between this and defaults, right? Yeah, because realistically, you're not drawing that much power. So I just put it to unlimited for ease and to ensure that I'm getting everything I can and get out of these. But let's run the benchmark and see how this thing performs. So this same CPU cooler on other motherboards has thermal throttled. So that means we're in the high 90s to 100. And right now, I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that high. Yeah, so max temp was 69. Now, was that a really good score? Not necessarily. I've been in the 8,000s with this CPU, so that was a little bit weak. But the whole point of this video is really to, keep those temps down. So what are things I might do? Well, I might try and fine tune where we can keep these at, right? So I'm not sure what the default was on this. Depends on which, motherboard I'm using, what it tells me, it seems. Let's just say this is 280, somewhere between 135 and 288. I'm just going to put 288 in there. And then this doesn't even come close to pulling that much power, so the goal of this isn't really to show you, hey, what the perfect number was, but to get you out there and actually experiment. Oops. All right, so the temp's gone. Run that again. So that's a pretty big temperature difference between this and the last motherboard this CPU was in. I didn't include it, but those CPU frames, maybe they work for 12th gen. I haven't had much luck with 13th gen. Okay, so 69. Score was up there, right? But yeah, playing around with power limits is something you can do. I'm going to go ahead and set these back. Undervolting, right? So, depending on the CPU and the motherboard, you may not get any real results out of this. And we may have just locked up our computer. Good job. So that's what's happening if you're too aggressive with an undervolt. It's going to reset on you. Let me reboot